Hi everyone, this is Professor Fisher, and I just wanted to walk through the next lab assignment. So this is lab assignment 2, and the idea with this lab assignment is to calculate a semester GPA for one student. So the idea here is that you're going to randomly generate a GPA. You're going to print out one student's name with a randomly generated GPA 8 times. Then representing like 8 semesters. So you want to total them up also. So you want to make sure you have a running total. And at the very end, you're going to say, okay, after 8 semesters, this is their average GPA. And you're going to actually store the average GPA back with that student. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. So we're going to use the 2 classes from Lab 1, the app and the student. In the app, you're still going to create a student object, but this time you only need one. So you can either delete or comment out to your other students. You're going to want to add a for loop that uses the student object to get the semester GPA, print out the student's name, the semester GPA, along with a number representing what semester it is, and then keep a running total of the GPA that we can use later to find the average. Outside of the loop, calculate the average GPA, update the attribute for that student, okay? So you either need to update the variable itself, or you could actually add a method to your student class that says, set GPA. And finally, display the student and the final average GPA using the student attribute. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. And there are some things to implement. It's basically just what I said, so you can read through that. And then there's some suggestions as well. Now, one thing I noticed when I was looking through the module here is that the random number generator is only generating, the examples that are there are only generating integers. Okay, so I thought maybe what I'd do is I'd tack on to the end of this is just a little example of how you might want to approach this. And again, this is just totally for your information. You don't have to do it this way, but this is kind of how I would approach it. Now, what I've done is I created a NetBeans project, and mine is actually going to randomly generate a wage, an hourly wage. So that way you still have to do some of the work yourself. So I just wanted to show you this example. So in my employee class, my employee.java, I have, I have first name, last name, and then I have a variable called wage. I have 2 constructors. So I have an employee constructor on line 17 that takes in the first name, the last name, and the wage. So if I want to create an employee and I know their wage, I can go ahead and use that constructor. Now the second constructor on line 23 just takes in a first and last name, and it allows me to randomly generate a wage. And for this activity, I just chose to make my lower bounds for the wage $10 and my upper bounds $20. So what it does on line 26 is it calls the getWage method. Okay, so let's go down and take a look at the getWage. So on line 36 is my method, and I wanted to make sure that I gave some bounds. So maybe depending on the employee, they might have a low of 10 and 20 and a high of 20, but maybe another employee maybe is more of a management employee and has a low of 50 and a high of 60. I don't know, I'm totally making that up, but all right, so in my method on line 37, I'm converting my salary, my hourly wage, my $10 and $20, to multiply them by 100, because at the very end, I'm going to divide by 100, so that way I can truncate to 2 decimal points. So I take the low value times equals 100, and I take the high value times equals 100. Then I use the random number generator, and on line 40, I take the random number that was generated on line 39. Now that number, when you do r equals math.random, is going to be 0 to 0.0 all the way through to 0.9999. It goes all the way up to 1, but not inclusive with the 1, but it does allow for a 0. Then I take that value and I multiply it times the low end of the scale. So in this case, times the 10 times 100, which would be 1,000. And then I add to that, okay, the difference between the high and the low, because that's my low value. Now I want to make sure that I have the high end set as well. So I add that, And then, oops, I'm sorry, I left that comment in there. This comment is incorrect, so let me just take that all together. And then I add 0.5, and 0.5 just allows me to make sure that I'm rounding up every time. And line 41 now takes that value and goes back to dollars and cents, okay? And then I return the new wage. All right, and in my app.java, I very simply created an employee called Bob Fisher, and I print out his information. So let me run it to show you how it works. And you can see, so this time he got 1760, 1831, 1421, and you can see the numbers are somewhere between $10 and $20. And I could keep testing it, but it looks like it's working pretty good. All right, now if I wanted to, let's say I generated 10 values and found the average employee salary, I could update the wage, and I'd want to do that here in my app.java. So what I'd want to do is like dot, and I added a set wage method, and I think that's the best way to go for good programming practice. So go ahead and add, a set GPA, and then you're going to give it the value. In this case, I can go ahead and I can give it the wage that, let's see, I can do get wage. Okay, now you're going to actually use the value, and I will do 1020. Okay, and that will actually get a new random wage and set the wage for that employee. Now you're actually going to be setting that employee wage, or I'm sorry, student GPA to the average of the 8 semesters. So yours is going to be a little bit different. Actually, let me just do this real quick. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and add a for loop here. Okay, and I'm not going to print it out the way you need to do that, but I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm going to do this as long as I is less than 10, and then I plus plus. Now, my particular for loop is going to execute 10 times. You only want to execute 8 times. And so what I want to do inside the loop, actually outside the loop, I need a variable that's going to allow me to add up all the wages. So I'll do total equals 0. And then inside, I'm going to say total plus equals, and I'm going to do getWage, and that will randomly generate my values. And I'm going to go ahead and stick with 10 and 20 as my low and high. Okay, so now what I've done is I've generated a random wage, and I've added to the total. So now I would say total is equal to whatever the total was divided by 10, because I executed this 10 times and I added all those values. So to find the average, I take that and I divide it by 10. Now what I want to do is I want to do setWage, and I want to use my average here. So I'm going to go ahead and put total. Now you could go ahead and create a new variable called, actually, you know what, I don't want to confuse you guys. So let me do this. Let me do double average is equal to, there we go, that'll make more sense, I think. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the employee wage to average, and the last thing I'll do is to print out the new info. So get info. All right. All right, so if I run it again, we'll see, and it's going to look very similar, but it's printing out one of the hourly wages, it's calculating 10 of them, and then it's printing out the final average. Now notice I probably need to clean that up a little bit so that it only goes to 2 decimal points. That would be fairly easy. I could do this instead of doing a print line. I can do a print format. So I could do, oh, wait, I'm sorry, no, never mind. Oh, I could actually go ahead and multiply by 100 and divide by 100 again if I wanted to get just to the 2 decimal points. But for right now, I'm going to leave it the way it is. All right, I really hope this helps you with Lab 2, and I'm sorry I got a little distracted there at the end. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.